It sold out, Pacific Shores sold out real fast. And it was a promotional type subdivision, but boy, that ocean frontage is ocean frontage, you know, it's something.
Right.
Well, the state had in mind all these years making this a park from Point St. George to the mouth of the Smith River. They didn't want that subdivision in there. In fact, they bought Lauren Bliss out, and they even bought, they tried to screw him out of the bottom of the lake, but he had the deed to that, so they couldn't do that. And so, but they bought him out. But of course, the subdivision was in and subdivided. So they have been fighting everything that subdivision could do since 1963, legally, illegally, unconstitutionally, blatant thievery, lying, stealing. You can't believe state officials can do these things in the United States of America, but they've done it. The first thing they did, see, 1963 was before all the environmental laws went through. Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing, that was subdivided on a basis of a well and septic tank basis, because the lots are a third of an acre, or some are a half an acre. Mm-hmm. Well, that'd be all right in here, but out there, it's sandy soil, you know, and it would probably mess up the water quality of the lake, although that isn't all that pure either. So the first thing they did, they got the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board to put a zero discharge regulation on Lake Earl. Well, zero discharge means nothing can go into that lake. They even griped about cow manure, water going over cow manure, but they can't do anything about that in draining the lake. And they have, then they, when they put that zero discharge on, Pacific Shores knew that we'd have to sewer it. So they created the Pacific Shores Water District, California Water District. Well, that was under the Melrose law, state law, making that a state agency, really. And it allows the water district to assess all the lot owners for so much money to finance the bonds that would have to be sold to put in the water system and the sewer plant. Well, then, once we got that created, and at great cost, man, these attorney's fees just eat you up. Then they started putting in regulations from every place else. The state Department of Fish and Game, state parks, Water Quality Control Board, and with the help of the County of Del Norte, stupid people. I was on the Board of Supervisors when that happened. All these supervisors are part-time supervisors, and that's just exactly why we have all this trouble here. They don't read their agendas, they don't do their job. Well, anyhow, here I am with that ocean frontage now, and every time the Pacific Shores Water District would meet their requirements, the state's requirements, they'd put another environmental impact report on them, or another study had to be done, or this or that had to be done, and Pacific Shores spent $1.5 million trying to protect themselves and their property from the state of California. So this went on and on and on, and finally, finally the Tolowa Dunes State Park went in. Well, when Tolowa Dunes State Park went in, the California Lands Commission, they own that ocean frontage, that where the breach site is. They leased that breach site to the Department of Fish and Game. And the Department of Fish and Game told this county, you can no longer go across state property to breach the lake. Yeah. You know, they're crooked as a dog's hind leg. We have a state law, it's called the Del Norte County Flood Control District Act of 1955. I have it in here, I got a bunch of copies of it. It creates the flood control district for that area, for several areas in the county. It makes the Board of Supervisors, the Board of Directors of these flood control districts. And the law allows them, as a flood control district, to do anything they want to prevent the flooding of private lands and county roads and public safety. And it says there, right, it's an act of the law, it's in existence, it's active. That Board of Supervisors could have gone out there and breached that lake anytime they wanted to, and I personally took the act to them, copied it for them, and gave it to each one of them, and says, if you'll read this, you'll see that you have the authority. The only thing you don't have, apparently, is the guts to use it. So, that didn't help either, of course. Well, you get, you know, when you spend over $1.5 million, I would say an issue is kind of getting serious, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, it's been serious ever since. Now, so anyhow, when the Department of Fish and Game leased that from the State Lands Commission and stopped the board, or told the Board of Supervisors they couldn't stop the breaching, then when the rains come up, and it just floods all the land, the county roads, floods the county roads, Kellogg Road, floods Lower Lake Road in a few places. Yeah. So all of this problem, you can't even get to the. So finally, I finally wrote a deal for an expose of all of this for the grand jury. I was going to take it to the grand jury. And I did. And the grand jury is made up of individuals who are not business-oriented people, and basically they just don't understand all of these things. And even though I set it out in writing, they didn't have the guts to do anything either. So finally, Sheriff Wilson was elected. And I figured he was going to be a pretty good boy. And I found out he is. So I took this grand jury report over to him and I said, you know, you're the chief law enforcement officer in Del Norte County. You're above any other entity or individual in Del Norte County. He said, yeah. And I said, have you ever heard of the old adage, there's no law north of the Klamath? And he says, oh yeah. And I said, well, don't you think it's about time we change it? And I said, I'm in here over this issue out here. And I said, would you do me a favor and read this? If you just read it. so you understand it, you can do something about this. And he said he would. Well, I'll be darned, about 6 months later, it was, in the wintertime, it was pouring like mad. And it poured for a better part of a month, rained. And the sheriff wrote David Finnegan a letter and warned him they had to go out at 4 o'clock in the morning to rescue a lady that lived in a mobile home out there, and they had to go down the roads in boats. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, that didn't turn the sheriff on too much. so he recommended that they breach the lake. That was all he did. He recommended. Well, it rained. It just poured like it does here. 3 more days and nothing was done. Finnegan is a waste of time. And so the sheriff wrote a letter to the county administrative officer and ordered the lake breached. And they had to mind the sheriff, which we all knew. So they go out the next morning with their equipment to breach it, but somebody in the night before, some individual I guess, had already done it, and it was pouring out. But I think I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't do that to cover up the fact that the sheriff had done it legally.
About when was that? What year, do you remember?
No, I don't. Well, Sheriff Wilson been sheriff for how long? 4 years? No, longer than that. Must have been 2000 he came in, huh? So probably 2001 or 2. Well, let's see. They're still flooding that subdivision, and if you've been out there,
mm-hmm.
You go out there, you wonder how could this be a subdivision? You know, it was a cattle ranch when it was subdivided, and it was grazed down. But all of these years of flooding that property, we've got trees that are 50 feet high, and brush, and the brush has plugged up the drainage system. Now, the drainage system of a subdivision is just as important as the roads. You've got to keep the water off of them. Well, the county's allowed the brush. By the way, when the county accepts county roads into the county system, now the developer has to bring the roads up to county standards. But when they accept them, they accept the responsibility of maintaining them from then on. And as long they can't abandon them even, as long as one person being served by those roads is objects. So it's really serious. The county is very vulnerable. The county is so vulnerable there that if they